and welcome to the special transmission on the federal budget 2021-22. I'm Farrukh, pitafi. Viewers, if you have been following news by now, you must have known the key ingredients of the budget. The overall outlay is rupees 8.5 trillion rupees. That is quite a big number. Likewise, the PSDP has shot up 37% hike, and the number is 2.135 trillion rupees. This is quite a significant number. Out of this, 900 billion is going to go to the federal budget, PSDP, and the rest will go to the provinces. One big news for the blue-collared workers: the minimum wage has been increased by 20%, and now it is 2,000 rupees. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. We have to assess how exactly does the government actually plan to fund this very ambitious budget target. We are going to talk about all these matters. In order to help us understand these issues in the studio, I am joined by Qazi Ahmed Akbar Saab, who is representing the ruling party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. He is also a spokesman of Punjab government, but he is going to talk about the federal budget. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Faisal Fateh joins us in the studio as well. He is an economist, works in capital markets. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. From Karachi on Skype, we are right. I'm told that our guests are going to join us on Skype. The moment they do, I'm going to introduce them as well. But let us first take the first impressions from the participants. Qazi Ahmed Akbar Saab, your opening statement on the budget.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Farrukh bhai. I believe this is a very historic budget in a way that it's a pro-poor, pro-development, and reduced, and in certain cases no tax budget that has been presented today. And the focus is on the development side, as the size of the PSDP is depicting. And this is almost 37% increase from the last year.
Right.
And other than that, a huge amount has been cut for the SARS program,
right,
which shows that the government has its focus towards the low privileged people of our country. And then the daily wage raise has been raised to 20,000 rupees per month, which is again a very, very encouraging thing that has come up. And one of the most important things that I feel is, as far as the revenue collection is concerned, that the government has decided to loop in more retailers and wholesalers in the tax time.
Right.
So this was an area which was basically the grey area, which has been lying vacant and untapped over the years. And these are the people, if you bring down the sales tax rate, which the government has decided to bring down, but at the same time increasing the net. So on a larger scale, you're basically, collecting more revenues.
Right.
And then an ambitious target of around 5,829 billion rupees has been set for the FPR collections, which is almost 17.4% higher than the last fiscal year.
Right.
So that itself shows that the government last year very sincerely was able to collect the revenues that and achieve those targets.
Right.
And this year, keeping another ambitious target is itself taking us towards a more sustainable, self-sustained economy.
When I come back to you, I'm going to actually ask you about this target, because no new taxes, and yet you are going to you have hiked the target significantly. But let me bring in Faisal Fateh, and before I go to Faisal Fateh, let me clarify. It has been already clarified by Qazi Saab, but let me, because at the start when I was speaking, I accidentally said 2,000 minimum wage. It was 20,000. So that is a significant number in this country, but per capita circumstances still need improvement. Faisal Fateh, your impressions on this budget?
Okay, so I will give you my point of view. Let me tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about the budget.
Okay.
So the good part, I think so, it's kind of a populistic budget where everybody is getting something. I think so we can call it a corrective budget, lot of corrective measures in the tax base. And yes, the good part is not many new taxes. Effort would be to loop in these people who are outside the tax net.
Right.
Historically, we haven't been able to do that. We don't have very good track record into it, but hopefully this time, with the POS and different kind of technologies and everything, hopefully, because data is there. If there is a will, if there is, if you can put, if you can do your legwork, I'm pretty sure you can do that.
Okay.
So that's a good part. The bad part would be, it's the growth target they have set. Yes, with this budget they can achieve it, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Is it? Are we going towards sustainable growth? I don't think so. Why not? Okay, so let me tell you. Our priorities, where our priorities are, we have kept 8 billion for science and technology. That is $50 million, which is less than an R&D budget for mid-sized tech company.
Okay.
Even in Pakistan, startups are getting 10 to 15 million. Last month, I know 3 startups. So that's 25 million. So 50 million. IT again, 8 billion. So it's not like we are looking, when we talk about, when we heard Shaukat Tareen Saab saying, IT exports, yes, we are still in the same old mantra, textile and everything, but we are not looking towards something that would be sustainable. Right. We are not going to get...
But let me very quickly ask you about the pre-budget speech or talk that he gave yesterday. If you have listened to that, you must get some picture, because they are focusing on SEZs and its development. Because for past 6-7 years there has been a lot of talk, but hardly any commitment. Now there seems to be a commitment.
Okay, so
that would also
I will just briefly touch on SEZs and these telecom, zones, these technology zones that they were talking about. So yeah, it's a good concept. SECs, it's not like SECs, it's a new concept or something. Yes, we should have focused on it. But now what we are focusing on SECs, we are focusing, or what we are trying to do is to get those sunset industries that are moving away from China to come to Pakistan. And of course, it's employment generating everything. And yes, but again, are we looking for, knowledge-based economy or something like that? I don't think so. And let me briefly talk about the ugly part. This taxation on internet usage, 5 rupees per GB, that I don't know. On one end, you talk about, IT sector doing it and everything, and you have to understand. With COVID happening, most of the students what they are going through, and what it has encouraged them is, self-learning. And
and we are going to talk about that. Allow me to actually bring in the third guest who joins us via Skype from Lahore, Almas Hadar Saab, former President, Lahore Chamber of Commerce and Industry, joins us. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Sir, my first question is quite generic. Your opening comments about the budget.
I think this is one of those budgets that we have been waiting for, starting from taxation to making access of raw materials, availability of raw materials easy, to lowering the cost of doing business, and many other things. Probably I couldn't have expected a better budget than this one. And also, the taxation, going back to the self-assessment schemes and less interference from the bureaucracy in our businesses. The point is that the government's job is to create the ecosystem or the environment for the people to do their business, and the businessmen or the entrepreneurs are supposed to work in that environment and to be able to grow both the companies and wealth of this country. Now, as long as this interference in their work is reduced, I think it's very, very positive. And I think it's across the board in this budget that interference will lessen, ease of doing business will improve, cost of doing business will come down, cost of compliance will come down, and most of the companies should do well in this environment.
Right. Regarding the taxation measures, you're saying that self-assessment is good. That is true. And we have seen more voluntary work whenever it happens. But don't you think that this is quite an ambitious target when you look at the overall number?
Well, I'm not in the business of making sure that the numbers are right or wrong. They're all budgeted numbers.
Okay.
And everybody is expecting that the things will fall in their place, and these numbers will either we will achieve these numbers or exceed these numbers. Last time we had self-assessment scheme, I remember the revenue grew nearly 2 times in 3 years. I don't know if it's going to happen this time also, but what history tells us is that this does give a fillip to the total revenue that is collected by the government.
Right. Regarding the role of bureaucracy, do you think that at this moment when you actually phase out their role, and but there are other measures, for example, it has also been stated that right now the FBR can audit anybody who's not even, whose name doesn't come up in the audit, and that will stop right away. Do you think that that is going to also encourage the investors, the businessmen?
You see, this is interfacing with the interface between the taxpayer and the tax receiver. The lesser this interaction is, the better it is. And if there is an audit which has to happen because people have to comply to the laws of this country, then it should be a third party, which is again a private sector company, who will then audit them and then take this audit report to the government. Then normally chartered accountants, and the chartered accountants are, I find that the integrity level in this particular profession is way better than other professions. So I feel safe working with chartered accountants.
Right. Let me come back to the studio. I'm going to come back to you, sir, in a bit. Let me ask Qazi Saab. I think because the review is so good, you're going to agree with Almas Saab, but not perhaps with Faisal, right? Please go ahead. Do you want to comment?
I feel that something, coming from Almas Saab matters a lot, because he's a working businessman and he's appreciating the budget. But at the same time, things that have been pointed by Faisal Saab are also correct, because I see if you believe in increasing your dependence on the IT, then you have to give more cushion to the people. If you tax them more, you are probably already, killing the startups, and you are trying to stop the growth that is being seen in the IT sector.
Let the record show that you walked into this one. 5 rupees per 5 GBs.
I think this is something, as we were discussing before also, because this is something that I have not been able to understand. But then again, as Almas Saab said, these are just figures, and they are budgeted figures, and they can always be corrected later on. Once the budget is initiated, it starts building up. The feedback is taken by different corners and different departments. So those feedbacks help in making the budget. So when the budget comes out, then the feedback comes from the business community, and the feedback comes from the public and the specialists. So those feedbacks then, act as the agents, and they help the government to rectify the mistakes that have been made in the budget. But I see on a larger picture, the government has come up with a good budget. When the Prime Minister was entering for the budget session, the journalist asked him, and he said, today's budget will make everyone happy. So it is a holistic budget, and everyone is happy about it.
Even they're bound to be right from the minimum wage to the salary hike at the federal level, and also pension, 10% increase in both.
And I just need to add one thing more, that I believe that the construction sector, since the amnesty is closing on the 30th of June, so I think it would have been better if the government has had concentrated on this side also, because during the COVID, the only industry which actually helped the economy sustain itself was the construction industry, and the amnesty scheme was played a bigger role in that. So it's important that they have to think about that sector also, and they have to make things easier for them also.
Right. Faisal, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Overall, as I said, in this budget there is something for everyone, and
Right.
and
Even vaccines, $1.1 billion
for
the
everyone, right?
vaccine procurement.
Yeah, if you look at being from stock brokerage community, CGT reduced, though it's like it's from 15% but 12.5%, so it's a minimum decrease. But you know the optics are there, and it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's just the optics. I think so. Our economy, the people in our country, they require these positive optics. You look at, you know, the turnover tax that's decreased from 1.5% to 1.25%. So I guess given the size of the pie, I guess nobody was getting a bigger slice out of it. So everybody is going to get a taste of it, and hopefully, you know, it turns your economy, the people, the mood of the people towards, you know, towards the economic growth, or towards the story that, you know, the worst part is over.
Do you agree with the finance minister that the idea of trickle-down economy doesn't work in Pakistan?
Absolutely.
So there has to be a bottom-up approach as
Absolutely. Look, for
well, for the very poor or very vulnerable.
Because look, for trickle down, wherever it has happened, whether it is, you know, India, China, you need economic development. This is what you call it. If you want sustainable economic development, for trickle down to happen, you need sustainable economic development for at least 7 years, 10 years. And if you look at Pakistan track record for last like 20 years, you have 2 to 3 years of good economic growth, and then you just, it's a cycle of boom and busts. And I would like, this is another point I would like to touch. For us, everything about economy, it's a surprise. Whether positive, whether negative. GDP growth is a surprise. I would really like in next round to put some light on that. Even remittances have come up. It's a surprise. And we are
26 billion, right?
I think it's
dollars.
So most of it, whether it's negative or whether it's positive, it's mostly surprise. And if everything is a surprise, it's very hard.
That shouldn't be a surprise for you, but for the viewers at home, perhaps yes, because most of Pakistani media is not covering economy on a daily basis. But let me, with your permission, go back to Almas Haider Saab. Almas Haider Saab, you are right about this being a budget, all of these being budgeted numbers. But the question right now is the idea of bringing down deficit, fiscal deficit, from 7% to 6.3%, 5.3%. That seems to be quite ambitious, right?
Well, it depends how much you're going to spend and where the money is going to come from. If your expenditure is low, the economy doesn't move, and if the economy doesn't move, then you don't get the revenue also. I think this is a virtuous cycle. The more money you put into PSDP, the more businesses, small businesses get prosperous. The more taxes that you get, and the more taxes you get, you start spending more on the economy. I think that's what Mr. Mahathir also told our subsequent governments, that please invest in the infrastructure and in the people of Pakistan, and the more you spend, the more prosperity will come to everybody in the country. Again, that's what I can say. The deficit is actually printing of notes, so they can print any amount of notes. It's only to balance the expenditure with the revenue.
Okay, but printing of notes actually hikes the inflation, sir. So inflation seems to already be at a very staggering number. Do you think that the government of Pakistan can afford that?
I think we have heard too much of this thing. Why doesn't the inflation spike in USA when they put in $2 trillion or $3 trillion into their economy? Why doesn't it spike? I think there's something wrong.
It happened there as well, sir. In America at this moment there is inflation.
Not like 13%.
Right.
You see, what we predict, economy was at 5% inflation, and the government, the finance minister at that time predicted that it will go down up to 15%, and he started raising interest rate without really recognizing that it is not going to happen. And when it happened, it was because of the interest rate, not because of the other factors. Or
Okay.
all I know is how the mandis work. The mandi works like this. At times you have potatoes at 4 rupees a kilo, and at times the potatoes are 40 rupees a kilo. And if you can increase production of potato, it comes down to 4 rupees a kilo. The point is, if you put money into the economy and it starts producing goods and services, the economy actually theoretically should come down. Now that's how a businessman thinks. As an economist,
Right.
I don't know how they think, and two economists don't agree with each other. That's what I've
Right.
seen all my life.
I'm glad that most of the businessmen do. But Almasa Dusab, if you can stay with us, please do. I'm told that our fourth guest joins us on telephone. Mohammad Sharik Bora Saab, President of Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, has joined us on telephone. Thank you very much, sir, for being a part of the program. Let me first ask you to comment on the overall budget. Are you pleased with it?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for taking me on board. We are happy with this budget because for the first time after many, many years, we have this confidence and this feeling that the government has taken us on board. That is a great feeling for all of our members, those who were there today at the chamber and they were listening to the budget speech. The other thing is that whatever we suggested, we sent proposals to the government, and some of the major macro level proposals they have incorporated with little bit changes. The first one was about the withholding tax. So they have slashed down 40% of the list of the withholding tax, with this promise that this positive direction will continue. So we are really happy for that. And then there was major demand from the traders side also that the turnover tax should be reduced and that the threshold exemption limit should be increased. They have done both. They have reduced 1.5% turnover tax to 1.25%. There is a reduction of 0.25%. Then the threshold has gone up from 10 million to 100 million. So overall, the direction of the budget is positive, and this would help the economy to sustain. But the important thing is the challenge about the tax target they have fixed for themselves, that is 5.78 trillion rupees. So that will come, that can be achieved only if our economy expands. So instead of shrinking the economy, we must now work on a strategy. This economy should become big. We are a country, 222 million people, so there is a great potential to expand the economy. Once we are able to do that, then there is no probably challenge to this target. But if we don't do that, then I think the same stereotype thing will go on. They will revise the tax target, they'll bring it down, then they will achieve it, then they will say we have achieved 18%, 20%, etc. So this is the
Sir, just a quick intervention. You said that the economy has to grow and spread, and that's how we will be able to meet all the tax targets. The question is, there still is informal sector which has not been actually documented. Don't you think that also expanding the tax base might help, and the voluntary taxation or self-assessment might help there?
True, very true, very true. That is the undocumented sector has to come.
Right. Whereas do stay with us. Let me come back to the studio. Let me ask our two other the guests in the studio about pensions and salary. That seems to be a good number, 10% increase. But still, Qazi Saab, we saw protesters, the federal employees actually protesting. Why is it that while you have offered a concession, you haven't been able to win them over?
No, there are two reasons for that. Number one, that we were not able to raise any salaries in the last budget.
Okay.
So there was already a lot of resentment on that side. And then if you are increasing 10%, if you see the overall impact on the salary, it comes to around 6%.
Okay.
So that means that the people still feel that the way the inflation has been going up, the salary raise is not that much. But then again, you know, every time a government which has to make a budget and has to make a holistic budget, they have to actually, the first thing that they have to see is their own resources. You know, you have to play within those parameters. You can't go out of them. So if you want to remain within those parameters, then you have to see that my revenues are already less than what I'm spending.
Okay.
And this year, the government's target was to increase the government spending through PSDP and through annual development plans of the provinces also, because the more we spend, the more we give to the people through SRs, the more, you know, the economy will start expanding, and we are expecting that we'll be able to sustain the growth rate and the projections that we have made.
Okay.
So yes, the salary raise is low. The raise on the pensions is not as expected, but still within the resources.
That is true. But since you actually talked about PSDP, here's a story that we have been actually facing throughout, at least my life. The government actually presents a very ambitious PSDP target, and then at the end of the fiscal year, half of those funds that were allocated relapse. And Qazi Sahab, that is a big problem, because that shows that on the spending side, perhaps there are bottlenecks in our bureaucracy.
That's very true. This is something that does not only happen on the federal level. This is also an issue on the provincial level. Yeah. But if you are, you know, doling out money through the PSDP, which are constituency based, then the people in the constituencies who are representing the public, they ensure that their funds are utilized within that year.
Why would PSDP be constituency?
No, they are. There's a big chunk of PSDP which has gone to different constituencies, and mostly in the road sector. Right? They are project based.
Yeah.
That's very
so
true.
Not constituency.
So once the ownership is taken, once the ownership of a particular project is taken by 1, 2 or 3 stakeholders, then they ensure that it is spent. But if you know, if it is going to departments, then yes, there are bottlenecks of spending that amount, and there have been instances where the funds have lapsed. This has happened in Punjab also. This has happened in federal also. But I believe this is something which should not happen if the funds. And you know, one more thing which is very important. The size of the PSDP, yes, 900 billion, it looks very ambitious and looks very nice.
Right.
But depends that how much allocations are being given in this particular year.
Right.
This is not 900 billion that will be spent this year. You know, there will be some portion of that is going to be spent this year. And then there will be throw forwards also.
Let us not be any throw forwards. Faisal, I'm going to come to you in a bit.
Sure, no,
I'm just told that Almas Haidar Saab is going to leave soon. So let me go back to him. Almas Saab, 2 numbers actually are catching my eye. One is allocation for agricultural sector. That is 12 billion rupees. I understand that is basically provincial subject. But when it comes to power distribution, 118 billion rupees. Do you think that it is going to contribute to the overall economic picture positively?
I think what's happened in the power sector is that I got the number today that we have a capacity to produce 37,000 megawatts of electricity. It was about 34,000 just a few days back, but then probably some new project must have come online, and the number has gone to 37,000 megawatts. The peak today was 23,600 megawatts that was distributed. And it seems that we have a capacity to distribute or transmit another probably 500 to 1,000 megawatts of electricity. We don't have the transmission lines to be able to carry all the energy that we are producing in this country. This 100 odd billion rupees, I think, are all going to go into transmission and distribution. And that is a very, very critical area. Otherwise, we'll continue to pay for the capacity charges, and we will not be able to use that energy unless we have the transmission and distribution networks, given more capacity.
Right. Distribution question is important because we have seen that while the previous governments were investing heavily in the power generation, our outdated, transmission lines have not been revamped. Do you think that there is a possibility of rebuilding them as well?
Well, rebuilding the infrastructure is a huge, I don't think we can rebuild it. We can only maintain it or improve it a little bit. And I think with this 100 odd billion rupees, they already told us a couple of networks that will be set up. Just to give you an idea of this, the cost of these networks, this Matiari line that has recently been energized, 4,000 megawatt line, it has cost something like more than $2 billion. It's not just 100 or 140 billion rupees. It's just one line cost us over 2 billion, which is nearly 400 billion rupees, and putting in just 100 and something billion in the whole network will improve it a little bit, but not much really.
Right. But you must have heard the finance minister saying that it all comes to the chadar or the capacity of the government to pay, and they are limited resources. Hopefully, do you think that these commitments over the years are going to increase, and with more growth, we will see more spending on these matters?
Well, if the size of the economy grows, our economy when this government took over was $315 billion. Then it came down to $275 billion because of devaluation, mainly because of devaluation. And then now it is again nearly $300 billion. A country like Pakistan should have an economy of at least $1 trillion, not just $300 billion. And if we all put our head together and hands together, there is no reason why we can't build this economy to that size.
Right. Right. Almas Hadar Saab, I'm told that you have to leave. Thank you very much for your precious time. Let me first come back to Faisal, and then from Faisal I'm going to go to...
Thank you very much.
Let me then, after Faisal Saab, go to Bora Saab as well. Faisal Saab, you have listened to the government's various projects or commitments. 14 billion for climate change mitigation. This country is actually undergoing a huge challenge of climate change. There is a list of most vulnerable countries. Pakistan is number 8. And when you look at the other 7 countries, actually they hardly are that populous. So biggest or most vulnerable country is Pakistan. Do you think that this commitment and overall a billion tree tsunami, these projects are going to actually help Pakistan combat climate change?
Okay, look, when we talk about climate, it's not something it's not something you can achieve in short term, right? Okay. First of all, it's a whole global thing, so yes, you can only play a little bit of a role into it. And you have to see how you're going to secure your resources. And the major effect that we will have due to climate change would be water shortage and, severe kind of weather patterns. We have seen those weather patterns affecting our wheat crop a couple of years ago. We have seen those impacts on our crops almost every year. This year, unfortunately, we are fortunate enough to. So how we are going to combat that? Right now, it's about if it's about trees, yes, we require trees. I think so. The water resources that the government is spending on it is part of you can say it's part of your water security that should be there, and going forward, that should help. As far as agriculture is concerned, there is a lot of work that is needed to be done. How, we are still on the same, our seed is, we still using the same BT cotton seed that is in Pakistan for last, 15, 20 years. Yes, it's a whole debate why we cannot get a better seed, why we cannot get a better yield out of it.
Right.
But
you're arguing for the GM seed.
Yeah.
Genetically modified.
All right. Right now, the seed that we are using in cotton, like there are things, there are 67 types of it, but they are all the old technology we have it for last, I think,
Right.
15 to 20 years.
So you realize that in this country we still are tackling pseudoscience, and in that even vaccines become subject to so many speculations.
But pitafi, it's everywhere. Come on, yeah, it's
Yeah,
more in Pakistan,
genetically
but
modified seeds
yeah, but
in
anti-vacciners are in America as well. But we have to look at the positive end. If we have to fight climate change, it's all about food security. With our population increase and everything, we have to go for food security. You don't want to do GM, whatever you want to do, you have to increase your yield.
Right.
You have to go for greenhouses, drip irrigation. Like this is not rocket science, having drip irrigation or something like that. So I think that is where we need to invest more, whether it is a promotional subject, whether it whatever it is,
Right.
and we need to our whole infrastructure for agricultural machinery that is so
I'm
outdated.
very glad that you automatically had the segue from environment to
No,
agriculture.
because I completely
hang on,
believe
hang on.
they both are part and
While
parcel.
it might not be the federal issue,
Right.
but the prime ministers and the chief ministers Kisan card, do you think it is a good idea?
I think it's a good idea. Look, if you look at our agriculture, the contribution by agriculture used to be 27% 10 years ago. Right now, almost I think so 15 years ago, and right now it is 20% of your GDP.
Okay.
Right, that is where 60% of your population is connected to.
Right.
And your crops that is supposed to be 14% has dropped to almost 7%. The crops are only 7% of your GDP. You are spending more than almost $7 billion in importing food.
Yeah.
Right. So
it was pointed out today that
Right.
Pakistan has become a food deficit country.
Right. So it is no brainer that agriculture, yes, industry matters, yes, services matter,
Right.
yes, traders matter, everything. I'm not gonna, but I would just say that if we want to, be able to absorb these external price shocks,
Right.
and if we want these food security, because it's not a luxury, food is not a luxury. You cannot stop
Yeah.
importing it, right?
And actually, I'm going to come back to this matter also, because you actually had the third segue and ended up in inflation. But let me actually go back to Bora Saab. Bora Saab, when the government is not hiking actually or introducing new taxes, the argument will inevitably be that they are going to be, focus will be on the indirect tax. And already the inflation is a prohibitive level. Do you think that the government will be able to manage both the target and inflation simultaneously?
Well, this is a very, very complex situation for any government. And I think the economy like ours, taxation and then collecting taxes from undocumented sector and inflation and everything, it has to, I should say that the government must work with the economists, not with the diploma people. We should have economists, those who should try to understand our grassroots problems of our economy, and how to bring the undocumented sector into the tax net, how to then go with the industrialization, which is not great. I would suggest that the Prime Minister should work with the Chief Ministers, with the provincial governments for industrialization. Federal government will not be able to do that, because if I want to make a factory in Karachi, I need more support from the provincial government as compared to the federal government. Okay. So it is the domain of the provincial governments to boost industrialization process, and the industry basically is a central federal subject. They don't have a policy yet. For 2-3 years they haven't been able to do it. Even the previous government didn't have any industrial policy. So the question is that once we have a mindset once we have a policy to expand the economy, that is the only way to bring taxes, and that is the only solution for employment, and that is the only solution for more export.
Right. Let me ask you, because you're talking about the industrial growth and investment, IDFC, Industrial Development Authority and such ideas. And then since the finance minister actually spoke about the emphasis on exports, do you think that we should actually be reviving the old bodies for the industrial growth and then also create an Exim Bank? China has an Exim Bank, India has an Exim Bank.
Exactly, because our existing banking sector actually is a cartel, They are private banks, they will never be able to help the industrialization because these banks are actually the money-making machines. They borrow money from the government, they lend it to the government. So the banking system of ours is not conducive, not helpful for industrialization. So I totally agree that we should have, institutions, dedicated institutions, DFIs for industrialization, because the existing banking system, they will ask for bankable securities. So small and medium enterprises in our country, first of all, they don't like keeping records and maintain books of accounts. So when they go to the bank, they say, you are not bankable, we are not going to give you money. So how do we do that? Because we know these small and medium enterprises, industrial growth is actually key for Pakistan's growth. These are the industries which ultimately would help the large factories, big factories, for their export.
That is government component. Let me now also talk about the industrial component, the private sector component, because Faisal here also actually pointed this out. R&D. And if you travel to India for that matter and visit the FICCI, you are inundated with research and work on development. Do you think that if the government takes one step, the private sector and especially chambers of commerce and industry can match the government as well in this sector?
You're asking Faisal, you are asking me?
No, I was asking you.
Oh, okay. You see, Pakistan's private sector actually is a very, very small sector. Our capital capacity is very small as compared to other regional countries. We have a very, very small industrial base because we haven't been able to actually help our private sector to grow. In last 30 or 40 years, our entire system was anti-industry. We were import-oriented country. An economist said that for every $100 of export, we need $240 to import. So, if that sort of an economy we have, and now from now on, we need to do a lot of basic corrective things. That is to identify first of all that what sort of industry is our priority. You know what Deng Xiaoping did in China? That they started with their union councils. They asked their local government to help industrialists. Then they asked their city government, then provincial government, then the federal government. And that's how they developed their industrial base. So I think
absolutely, sir. Whereas I'm told that we are actually running short of time, so I'm going to ask all to actually conclude this segment. Let me start with Qazi Ahmed Akbar Sahab, your conclusion, sir.
I think that the government has done its part, but now the important part is that now